On the night Kalina was born, the sky turned red like blood. The elders of Babush gathered outside her mother's hut, their faces tight with fear. Inside, Dola screamed as she pushed new life into the world. The oracle stood in the corner, his eyes closed, his lips moving silently. When the baby finally came, she did not cry. She simply opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling. The oracle gasped. He saw something no one else could see. A mark on her forehead, shaped like a crescent moon, glowing faintly in the darkness. He whispered to the elders, and their faces turned pale. They called it a curse. They said the child would destroy Babush. Dola held her baby close, tears falling on the tiny face. But the elders had already decided. Before the sun rose, Kalina would be banished. They carried Kalina in a woven basket, her mother walking behind them, begging. Dola fell to her knees many times, but the elders did not stop. They walked past the farms, past the river, past the last hut in the village. Then they reached the boundary stones, tall rocks that marked where Babush ended and the wild began. The chief elder placed the basket on the ground. He did not look at the baby. He only said, "May the gods forgive us." Then they turned and walked away. Dola tried to run after the basket, but two women held her back. She screamed Kalina's name into the night, but no one answered. The baby lay alone under the red sky, her tiny chest rising and falling. Then, from the shadows, something moved. A figure stepped forward, slow and careful, watching the child with curious eyes. The figure was an old woman named Ayan. She had been banished from Babush many years ago for speaking against the elders. She lived alone in the wilderness, gathering herbs and talking to the animals. When she saw the basket, she knew immediately what had happened. She lifted Kalina gently and looked at the glowing mark on her forehead. Ayan smiled sadly. "They fear what they do not understand," she whispered. She carried Kalina to her small hut, deep in the forest where no one from Babush would find them. She fed the baby goat's milk and wrapped her in soft leaves. Kalina grew stronger each day. Ayan sang to her, taught her the names of plants, and showed her how to listen to the wind. One evening, as Kalina slept, Ayan stared at the moon and said quietly, "They lied about the prophecy, little one. You are not a curse. You are the land's chosen guardian." As Kalina grew, strange things began to happen around her. Wherever she walked, flowers bloomed from cracked soil. Birds followed her, singing songs no one had heard before. When she cried, rain fell gently on the forest. When she laughed, the trees seemed to dance. Ayan watched these signs carefully and said nothing. She knew the child was special, but she also knew the world was not ready for her. One day, a traveler passed near their hut. He saw Kalina standing in a field of dead grass, and as she touched the ground, green shoots pushed through the soil. The man's eyes widened. He did not speak to her. He simply turned and ran back toward the road. Ayan pulled Kalina inside quickly. "We must be careful," she said. "People talk, and talk spreads like fire." But it was already too late. Word of the strange child was beginning to travel. Back in Babush, the elders celebrated. They believed they had saved the village by casting out the cursed child. They held a feast, drank palm wine, and danced under the moon. The chief elder stood in the center of the village square and raised his cup high. "We have protected our people," he shouted. The crowd cheered. The oracle stood at the edge of the crowd, silent and troubled. He had seen something in his dreams, something he did not share with the elders. But fear kept his mouth shut. The celebration went on for 3 days. On the 4th day, the sky grew dark. Clouds gathered, thick and heavy, but no rain fell. The wind stopped blowing. The air became still and hot. Farmers looked at their fields and frowned. The soil felt different, harder, less alive. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. Something had changed. And it was not good. Kalina was now 6 years old. She had learned to speak softly and move quietly through the forest. Iron had taught her to hide her gifts, to keep her head low when strangers passed. But children from wandering villages sometimes came near the forest to play. When they saw Kalina, they laughed at her torn clothes and bare feet. They called her the wild girl and threw stones at her. Kalina did not fight back. She only watched them with calm eyes. One day, a boy threw a rock that hit her shoulder. She winced but did not cry. Suddenly, a hawk swooped down from the trees and chased the boy away, screeching loudly. The other children ran, screaming. Kalina stood alone, the hawk circling above her head. Iron appeared from the trees. "The animals know who you are," she said gently. "Even if people do not." Kalina looked up at the sky. "Why do they hate me?" Iron sighed. "Because fear is easier than truth." In Babush, the first child died. She was only 4 years old, and no one knew why. She simply stopped breathing in the night. Her mother wailed for days. Then another child fell ill, then another. The healers tried everything, but nothing worked. The crops began to fail too. Maize that should have grown tall stayed short and yellow. Yams rotted in the ground. The river, once full and strong, began to shrink. People whispered in the markets. "Something is wrong with the land," they said. "The gods are angry." The elders called a meeting. They sacrificed goats and chickens, poured palm oil on the ground, and prayed loudly. But the land did not respond. The oracle sat in his hut, staring at the fire. His hands shook. He had seen the prophecy again in his dreams, clearer this time. But he was too afraid to speak. If he told the truth now, the people would turn on him. So he stayed silent, and the village continued to suffer. Iron sat Kalina down one evening and told her a story. "Long ago," she began, "the land chose a guardian. Someone who would protect it, heal it, and keep it alive. The prophecy said this guardian would be born under a red sky, marked by the moon, and would bring either life or death depending on how the people treated her." Kalina listened carefully. The elders twisted the prophecy, Iron continued. "They heard life or death and chose to see only death. They feared you because they did not trust themselves." Kalina's eyes filled with tears. "So I was not a curse?" Iron shook her head. "You were never a curse, child. You are the land's heart." Kalina looked down at her hands. "Then why did they throw me away?" Iron touched her cheek gently. "Because people often destroy what they do not understand." She paused, then added quietly, "One day, Babush will come looking for you. And you must decide if they are worth saving." The elders tried everything. They held more rituals, burned more offerings, and called on every god they knew. But nothing worked. The drought grew worse. Wells dried up. Animals stopped giving birth. The people began to argue. Some blamed the elders. Others blamed the gods. A few whispered about the child who was banished years ago. "Maybe we were wrong," one woman said quietly. "Maybe she was not the curse." The chief elder heard this and grew angry. He stood in the square and shouted, "We did what was right." The oracle confirmed it. But when people looked at the oracle, he did not speak. He only lowered his head. Fights broke out between families. Trust began to crumble. The unity that once held Babush together was breaking apart. And in the shadows, one elder smiled. His name was Ogun, and he had been the one who twisted the prophecy years ago. He wanted power, and fear gave it to him. Now, he watched the chaos he had created and felt no guilt. One afternoon, Kalina found a man lying near the forest path. He was gasping, his lips cracked and dry. "Water," he whispered. Kalina looked around. There was no stream nearby. Ian had taught her never to reveal her gifts in front of strangers. But the man was dying. She knelt beside him, placed her hand on the dry earth, and closed her eyes. Slowly, the ground beneath her palm grew damp. Water began to seep up, forming a small pool. The man's eyes widened. He drank desperately, his strength returning. When he finished, he stared at Kalina in shock. "Who are you?" he asked. Kalina stood and walked away without answering. But the man did not forget. He stumbled back to the main road, his mind racing. By the time he reached the nearest village, he was telling everyone about the girl who summoned water from nothing. The story spread quickly, traveling from mouth to mouth, until it finally reached the ears of Babush. When the people of Babush heard about the girl who controlled water, panic spread like wildfire. Some said it was a spirit. Others said it was a witch. But a few elders exchanged nervous glances. They remembered the child they had cast out years ago. "Could it be her?" one elder whispered. The chief elder slammed his hand on the table. "Impossible. That child is dead by now." But the oracle finally spoke. His voice was weak and shaking. "She is not dead. She is alive. And she is exactly where we left her." The room went silent. Guilt began to creep into the hearts of some. But Ogan, the corrupt elder, stood and said loudly, "Even if she is alive, she is still cursed. We must not bring her back." The people were confused. Some wanted to find her. Others wanted to stay away. Fear and guilt mixed together, creating chaos. And still, the land continued to die. Dola, Kalina's mother, had not spoken in years. After her daughter was taken, she stopped eating, stopped laughing, stopped living. The women of Babush pitied her, but no one helped her. She lived alone in a broken hut at the edge of the village, forgotten by most. But Dola had never forgotten. Every night, she whispered Kalina's name into the darkness. She carved a small wooden doll and held it close, imagining it was her child. One evening, Dola heard the rumors about the girl who summoned water. Something inside her stirred. She stood for the first time in months and walked to the boundary stones. She did not know why. She only felt pulled. As she stood there, staring into the wilderness, she saw a young girl in the distance, gathering herbs. The girl had a mark on her forehead. A crescent moon. Dola's heart stopped. She whispered, "Kalina." But the girl did not hear her. She disappeared into the trees. Dola fell to her knees and wept. That night, the oracle had a dream. He saw the prophecy as it was meant to be, clear and whole, with no lies or fear. The land had chosen Kalina to be its guardian. She was meant to bring life, abundance, and balance. But the prophecy also warned, if the guardian is rejected, the land will reject the people. The oracle woke up screaming. He understood now. Babush was dying because they had cast out their only hope. He tried to stand, to run to the elders and confess, but his body gave out. He collapsed on the floor, his breath short and painful. His apprentice found him and called for help. The oracle whispered, "Bring her back. Bring the girl back or we will all die." Then he closed his eyes and fell unconscious. The apprentice ran to the elders, shouting the oracle's words. But it was too late. The oracle could not speak anymore. And the people did not know what to do. The elders finally made a decision. They sent 3 young men to find Kalina and beg her to return. The men walked for days, asking travelers if they had seen a girl with a moon mark on her forehead. Finally, they found Ion's hut. Kalina stood outside, her arms crossed, watching them approach. The men knelt. "Please," one of them said. "Babush is dying. We need your help." Kalina's face remained calm. "Why should I help the people who threw me away?" The men lowered their heads. We were wrong. The elders were wrong. Please, forgive us. Kalina looked at Iron, who stood silently nearby. Then she looked back at the men. I will not return until the truth is spoken. Until those who lied confess. The men nodded and hurried back to Babush. But as Kalina turned away, the ground shook. Trees swayed. The wind howled. The land itself was angry. It was rejecting her rejection. The main river of Babush, the one that had fed the village for generations, dried up completely. Fish died in the mud. Women walked miles to find water and returned with empty pots. The crops turned to dust. Children fainted from hunger. Mothers cried over their sick babies. The marketplace, once loud and full of life, became silent. People moved like shadows, their hope fading. The chief elder stood in the square, trying to keep order, but even he looked defeated. Someone shouted, "This is the curse. The real curse." Others joined in. We should never have banished the child. The crowd turned on the elders. You lied to us. You destroyed us. The elders backed away, fear in their eyes. Ogun, the corrupt elder, slipped into the shadows. He knew his time was running out. The truth was coming, and when it did, he would be exposed. A young woman named Senna had always suspected something was wrong. She had been a child when Kalina was banished, but she remembered her mother whispering that the prophecy did not sound right. Now, as an adult, Senna began to ask questions. She went to the oracle's apprentice and demanded to see the original prophecy. The apprentice hesitated, then pulled out an old scroll. Senna read it carefully. Her eyes widened. The prophecy had been changed. Words were crossed out. Phrases were added. She looked up at the apprentice. Who did this? The apprentice swallowed hard. Elder Ogun. Senna's heart pounded. She ran to the village square and shouted, Elder Ogun lied. He changed the prophecy to gain power. The crowd erupted. People searched for Ogun, but he was gone. He had fled into the night, taking his secrets with him. But now the truth was out. Babush had destroyed itself by listening to a liar. Dola finally found the courage to walk into the wilderness. She carried a small cloth bundle and whispered prayers as she moved through the trees. Ian saw her first and recognized her immediately. You are her mother, Ian said gently. Dola nodded, tears streaming down her face. Ian called Kalina over. When Kalina saw Dola, she froze. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was here, she did not know what to feel. Dola fell to her knees. My child. My baby. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Kalina's eyes filled with tears. She walked forward slowly and knelt beside her mother. They held each other and cried, years of pain pouring out in that embrace. Ian watched quietly, wiping her own tears. But as they held each other, the ground beneath them trembled. The land was watching. It was waiting to see what Kalina would decide. The next morning, the entire village of Babush gathered at the boundary stones. Men, women, children, and elders, all of them weak and desperate. They knelt in the dirt and waited. Kalina appeared, walking slowly with Ian and Dola beside her. The sight of her made some people gasp. She was no longer a baby. She was a young woman, strong and calm, with the crescent moon mark glowing faintly on her forehead. The chief elder spoke first. Kalina, daughter of Dola, we beg you. Forgive us. Save us. Kalina looked at them, her face unreadable. You cast me out. You called me a curse. You let me suffer. Why should I save you now? An old woman stepped forward. Because we were wrong. Because we were fools. Because without you, we will all die. Kalina was silent. Then she said, I will return. But only if the one who lied confesses. Suddenly, from the back of the crowd, Ogun appeared. He had been caught. Ogun was dragged to the front. His face was twisted with fear and anger. Speak the truth, Sene shouted. Ogun looked at Kalina, then at the crowd. Finally, he broke. Yes. I changed the prophecy. I wanted power. I wanted control. I made you fear the child so you would follow me. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. Others wept. The chief elder stared at Ogun in horror. You destroyed us for power. Ogun said nothing. He only lowered his head. Kalina stepped forward. Because of your lie, I suffered. My mother suffered. And this entire land has suffered. The ground began to shake violently. Cracks appeared in the soil. The sky turned dark. Thunder roared. The land was furious. It would not forgive easily. Kalina raised her hand, and the shaking stopped. The people stared at her in awe and fear. She had power over the land itself. And now, she had to decide what to do with it. Kalina stood at the boundary stones, looking at Babush. She could feel the land calling to her, begging her to heal it. But she could also feel the pain of her past, the years of loneliness and rejection. Iron stepped beside her. What will you do, child? Kalina closed her eyes. I do not know if they deserve mercy. Dola touched her shoulder. You have every right to walk away. But you also have the power to choose a different path. Kalina looked at her mother, then at the people kneeling before her. She took a deep breath. I will return, she said. But not for them. For the land. Because the land is innocent. She began walking toward Babush. The moment her foot crossed the boundary stones, the sky began to change. Clouds gathered. But the people watched nervously. The land had been hurt deeply. Would it accept her return? Or would it reject them all? Kalina walked through Babush slowly, her bare feet touching the dry soil. Everywhere she stepped, the ground softened. A single drop of rain fell. Then another. The people looked up, hope filling their eyes. But the rain was light, cautious, as if the land was testing them. Kalina stopped in the center of the village. She knelt and placed both hands on the ground. She closed her eyes and whispered words only the earth could hear. The wind picked up. The clouds thickened. And then, slowly, rain began to fall. Not a storm, but a gentle, steady rain. The people cried with relief. Children opened their mouths to catch the drops. Mothers held their babies up to feel the water. But Kalina stood and said loudly, "This is not forgiveness. This is a warning. The land will heal only if you heal. If you choose truth over lies. If you choose humility over pride." The people nodded, afraid but grateful. The rain continued. Over the following days, Kalina worked to restore the land. She walked through the fields, touching the soil, whispering to the seeds. Slowly, green shoots began to appear. The river filled again, not fully, but enough. The sick children began to recover. The air felt lighter. But Kalina made it clear, she was not their savior. She was their reminder. You must care for this land, she told them. You must speak truth. You must never cast out those who are different. The people listened. Some with shame. Others with genuine repentance. Ogun was banished from the village, sent away just as Kalina had been. The chief elder stepped down, replaced by a council that included Senna and other young voices. Dola moved into a new hut, rebuilt by the villagers as an apology. And Iron was welcomed back, honored as the one who saved the guardian. Babush was being rebuilt, piece by piece. But Kalina did not stay in the village. She built a small home at the edge of the boundary stones, between Babush and the wilderness. I belong to the land, she explained to her mother. Not to one village. Dola understood. She visited often, and they would sit together, talking and healing the years they had lost. Ian lived with Kalina, teaching her deeper secrets of the earth. And slowly, Kalina's gift grew stronger. She could call rain, heal plants, and even sense when the land was troubled. People from other villages began to hear of her. They came seeking her help, and she gave it freely, asking only for respect and truth in return. Kalina became known not as the cursed child, but as the guardian of the land. And Babush learned a hard lesson, that fear and lies destroy, but truth and humility restore. Years passed. Kalina grew into a woman of great wisdom. She never married, but she was never alone. The land itself was her companion. Birds sang to her. Rivers flowed where she walked. Trees bent toward her as if bowing. She became a legend, a story told to children at night. Once, there was a girl banished at birth, the elders would say. But she returned and saved us all. The new generation of Babush grew up differently. They were taught to honor the land, to speak truth, and to never cast out those who seemed different. The village prospered again, not because of wealth, but because of balance. And every year, on the anniversary of Kalina's return, the people gathered at the boundary stones. They brought offerings of fruit, flowers, and water. Not to worship her, but to remember. To remember what they almost lost. And to remember that some gifts come wrapped in fear, but it is our choice to see them clearly. One evening, as the sun set over Babush, Kalina sat on a stone near her home. Dola sat beside her, now old and grey but smiling. "Do you ever regret coming back?" Dola asked. Kalina thought for a moment. "No," she said. "Because I did not come back for them. I came back for the land. And for myself. To prove that I was never the curse they feared." Dola squeezed her hand. "You are a blessing, my daughter. You always were." Kalina smiled. The wind carried the scent of rain. The fields were green. The river was full. And the land was at peace. She had been cast out in darkness, rejected before she could even speak. But she had returned in light, not with vengeance, but with purpose. And in the end, that made all the difference. Babush had begged for her return. But it was Kalina who decided what that return would mean. And that power, that choice, was hers alone. If you were Kalina, would you have returned to save the people who cast you out? Or would you have let the land complete its judgment? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. Please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my folktale story from.